Welcome back to the Ed Show. Well, progressives need to sound the alarm about high-stakes testing, mass school closures, and the corporate takeover of public education in this country. A new report by the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools shows 600 new public charter schools opened nationwide between 2013 and 2014. It's the new wave. More than 2.5 million students now attend nearly 6,500 public charter schools nationwide, and charter school enrollment across the United States has jumped 225% over the last decade. What's going on here? Well, New York City is one of the many areas where charter schools are growing, and the public schools are flat out paying the price. They're suffering for it. Eva Moskowitz is the CEO of Success Academy Charter Schools in New York. Well, she is locked in a battle with Mayor Bill de Blasio. He announced last week that he's axing 3 planned charter schools in her network.
You would think in a city and a state and the nation that has an educational crisis
of Success Academy Charter Schools in New York. Well, she is locked in a battle with Mayor Bill de Blasio. He announced last week that he's axing 3 planned charter schools in her network.
You would think in a city and a state and the nation that has an educational crisis of monumental proportions, we would welcome alternatives that have high performance. But instead, a so-called progressive mayor, and make no mistake, it is not progressive to disenfranchise poor minority kids.
What about accountability? You mean to tell me just because it's a charter school, it's going to be perfect because it's for profit? Sorry, folks, I don't buy it. There are standards. Not every charter school performs well, especially against public schools. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, I think he is totally right, and he is not alone in this mission. Public school activists from every corner of the United States met over the weekend down at the University of Texas to launch a nationwide movement to defend public education against corporate takeover and phony test-driven reform. Texas School Superintendent John Kuhn took the stage to express his concerns with the private sector CEO formula.
Where do we go for redress of our grievances once we've surrendered our elected school boards and our constitutional guarantees? Do we march into the boardroom of a charter management group or some foundation? School reform, the way it's being presented, is only backed by the assurances and the sweet words of the American corporate elite and their spokespeople. But the public education system is backed by the full faith and credit of us, the people of each state.
So what's unfolding here is students, parents, administrators, and teachers all over the country are building a new movement of resistance to the corporate raid on schools. Joining me now on our rapid response panel, Diane Ravitch. She is the founder of the Network for Public Education, who held the event in Texas over the weekend, and Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Progressive magazine from Wisconsin, who attended and covered the event down in Texas over the weekend. Diane, you first, and thanks for being here tonight. Why are charter schools exploding across America right now?
Well, to begin with, they're not public. They call themselves public charter schools because they're not public. They are privately managed, corporate-owned schools that get money from the government. And what we are creating right now is a dual school system. One school system, called the charter system, gets to choose its students, gets to keep those it wants, throws out those it doesn't want. Almost all of them have fewer children with special needs, meaning kids with disabilities. Eva Moskowitz school are a good example of that. Half as many kids with disabilities, half as many kids who don't speak English, and they have more funding. Her schools get $2,000 a year more in funding than a regular public school.
So it's a selected environment.
Absolutely.
Is Mayor de Blasio correct in doing what he's doing? Why did he shut these 3 schools?
He didn't shut any school. I mean, that's the irony. The Bloomberg administration, as it was leaving, swiftly approved 49 applications for charters. He approved 39 out of 49. She got 3 new schools. 3 of her applications were denied. So she's saying that 3 of her schools were closed. They don't even exist.
Ruth Conniff, what did you take out of the conference down in Texas? What is this movement going to do? And also, what about that's kind of the belly of the beast down there when it comes to testing and forming the tests that our students across the country are going to be taking, isn't it?
It absolutely is, Ed. And, you know, as Diane Ravitch put it so eloquently at that conference this weekend, it's really the heart of the testing industrial complex. And I think what we see is a nationwide movement of public school activists, of teachers, of parents, of students themselves, who are saying there's something wrong when we have this dual system, when we have corporations sucking money out of the public school system to make a profit. And we see that the results in these schools, whether they're voucher schools or charter schools, are not even as good as the public schools. Millions of dollars are coming out of our public school system to finance these operations, and it's backed by this ideology that's promoted by a lot of think tanks like the Bradley Foundation here in Wisconsin, which has pushed the idea that the schools are failing, that the public schools are failing, need to be broken up, privatized, and handed over to private business. And that message is very toxic. It's very profitable for companies like Pearson, the largest testing company in the world, which is based in Texas and has 6 full-time lobbyists in the Austin State House and has a $500 million contract to administer the tests. But it's really bad for students, and bashing teachers in order to promote this is bad for teachers as well.
So, Ruth, what is the game plan to fight back against this? What was accomplished over the weekend?
I think what was really moving about this conference, and you played a little bit of that speech by John Kuhn, who stood on the stage with Karen Lewis, was to see these people from all over the country, from coast to coast, at the very grassroots level, who have really gotten the idea that there is a massive democratic issue here, that we need to fight to preserve the idea that we have a public school system that's there to serve everybody. It's for all kids. We're all invested in it, and that it shouldn't be broken up into, you know, smaller pieces of private industry that profit a few people at the expense of this great democratic thing that we have in the public school system.
Diane, are we definitely shortchanging public schools because of a charter system?
Absolutely. Every dollar that goes to a charter school, they're not all for profit, by the way. But if you take, for example, Eva Moskowitz's chain, it's not for profit, but she makes close to $500,000 a year to oversee a very small chain of about 7,000 students. That's more than the President of the United States. There are for-profit schools. Michigan, for example, more than 80% of the charters operate for profit. And Governor Snyder in Michigan really wants to get rid of public education.
What's the connection to teachers' unions here? I mean, is this just another way to try to get rid of them?
Well, part of the game plan is to get rid of unions. Many states have passed laws making it illegal to have a union. Most teachers no longer belong to a union because their state doesn't allow them to. What the game plan is to break up the teaching profession and to have low-wage people. That's the business plan. Low-wage people who come in and work for 2 or 3 years, and then they leave, and somebody else comes in and works for 2 or 3 years. So therefore you have no pensions, but you also have no profession. You have no experience. This country has been so horrible to teachers. We're bleeding teachers. Many states have lost their veterans and their experienced teachers, and they're depending now on people with 1 year of experience.
All right, Diane Ravitch, come back. We're going to talk a lot more about this. Ruth Conniff, thank you so much as well. Appreciate your time tonight.